So let's talk through a couple tips, tricks, and strategies that could be used for classroom management. The purpose being that we could enjoy the kids instead of just manage them or just get through a Sunday morning. If we can get some of the mechanics down, we can spend a lot more time really hearing and responding to them. I find most of these to be most helpful during transitions. I think kids are pretty clued in when they know what they're supposed to be doing, but those times when they're guessing is when it gets tricky. So I am hopeful that a few things will help, and use what's comfortable to you. If I can flesh anything out for you or help troubleshoot, I would really love to do that. So the first thing that you have seen modeled really poorly for me is that adults use a lot of words. And Southern adults sometimes use even more words in an attempt to sound polite as we give instructions. So if you put yourself in the spot of the child on Sunday morning, there's a lot of stimulus. Some of them may have anxiety about being separated from a parent. Some of them may have anxiety about being placed with different adults or different kids, or being unsure about what the rules are and unsure about the context. And so, in kindness to our kids, we can simplify our instructions by beginning them with a verb. Now, I'm not saying talk through your whole lesson with every sentence starting as a verb, but when you're giving instructions, make it clear as day, no room for liberal interpretation or anarchy. So here's an example. Instead of welcome, I want you to sit on your bottom, I want you to put your hands in your lap because we don't want to touch our friends. Today our lesson is going to be about, nope, stop, sit there. So let's try this instead. If we start everything with a verb, it would be, I'm so glad you're here. Find your seat, place your hands in your lap, and listen to our lesson. Easy, less words. We've wasted less time. We've gotten to the scripture faster. And it's going to be a lot easier to remind children, if you have to remind somebody, what they were supposed to be doing. So building on that, you can communicate what they're supposed to be doing, communicate directions as jobs, and count them on your fingers for visual or tactile learners. This will feel really awkward, and if you record yourself doing it once or twice, it will feel miles better if you decide that this is something that you want to try. So instead of, we're going to sit in our seats, keep our hands to ourselves, try to pay attention because that's respectful, raise your hand if you have something to say, give a small number of clear jobs that begin with verbs instead. So let's try this. Count your jobs with me. Your first job is to sit, practice self-space, listen, wait for my questions. Then you can review them. What are your jobs? Listen, sit, practice self-space, wait for my instructions. Good job! Does that make any sense? It feels overly direct at first. It is less confusing for the children as they receive it. There's a lot going on in that room. So, once you've given jobs, you can also give nonverbal feedback without having to stop your lesson. And other adults in the room can adapt your system. So if a kid is doing a wonderful job of sitting, listening, practicing self-space, and waiting for questions, you can walk around and give them, you're doing a good job doing all four of those things. Way to go. At first, as you kind of build this into your teaching culture, you may want to say, I remembered that you had 4 jobs and I see you doing all 4 jobs. Way to go. But eventually you would hope that maybe you could look at a kid and it would remind them, oh, I have a 4th job I'm supposed to be doing. I forgot. You can also ask kids to reflect or self-evaluate. Think about your jobs. Show me with your fingers how many of the 4 jobs are you doing right now. Again, this can feel really awkward and very structured, but in a room with a lot going on, I think structure is a kindness. As you give feedback, you can give that nonverbal feedback, or you can give the feedback that becomes nonverbal feedback. When you're speaking feedback to children, it's really helpful that it be specific. Good job. Good job at what? If somebody just walks by and says, you're doing great, well, thanks. What did you think I was doing great? I don't know. So instead of just good, be specific. When you're praising kids, use as many words as you want. When you're directing kids, let's keep it succinct. So instead of just good work on all 4 jobs. Great job thinking about your answer to that question. I love the way that you were kind to your friend. Does that make sense? Specific, positive feedback. And then another thing that may be helpful, especially with our friends that like to touch, is something called self-space and shared space. This would be really helpful with the 3 to 6 year old crowd as well. So when the kids come in the room, again, we're going to use the breath that we talked about in the singing. Breath allows your brain just a second to catch up to what's going on with you too. So you can say to the kids, place, and I would say this very quietly so that if you're quiet, their touch will be more gentle. If you're jacked, their touch will be jacked. So we'll think about, take a deep breath, place a hand gently on the neighbor and say, shared space. Shared space. Good job practicing shared space. Take a deep breath. Give yourself a hug. Say self-space. Self-space. Wonderful job doing self-space. Take a deep breath and show me shared space. And you go back and forth a few times so that the kids can really grasp the difference. And that has now become part of your teaching vocabulary. So instead of saying, stop touching your friends, it could be, take a deep breath and show me some self-space. And the kids now have that common vocabulary with each other as well. Again, adapt this as you want to. It may be helpful if we have a common language across the different teaching teams. Another thing that we spoke about with the music was creating context within which to place information. And so kids need context. So when you're thinking about giving kids new information, let's think about doing so with a whole part whole format. So if you're teaching a song, if you're teaching a Bible verse, you could have the whole song playing as the kids are entering the room. They've at least become vaguely familiar with it in that way. If you're teaching a Bible verse, read the whole thing and then give them bite-sized pieces to sound out and to process, and then put them back into context by reading the whole thing. If you've ever heard a spelling bee, they say the whole word, they spell the word, they say the whole word. Whole, parts, whole. It just gives us a little bit more framework within to work so that things have a place to land. And then specific to leading motions, there are a couple things within our culture that we can make easier on us and easier on the kids. Most people are right-handed, and so we will allow the children to start motions with their right hand. We'll ask them to be our mirror, would be really good language to use. So we're going to start with a verb. We're going to start with our left hand so that it's easier on the right-handed children. And we're going to give them an opportunity to kind of warm their body up, and then we'll cross the midline, we'll switch hands, we'll do bilateral motions, and they'll be nice and warmed up to do the motions with us. They'll have remembered, oh yeah, I use my body here. This is a context in which it's appropriate for me to move. A lot of places kids are told, please don't move. And then it'll get us warmed up and used to the stimulus of seeing them move while we move and try to think about what we're doing. So that mirroring activity could look like this. As the kids are coming in, you're standing in the front of the room. You start with your left hand. We'll let the kids start on the right because we'll say the kids are always right. And so you would say, be my mirror. Start moving very slowly. We're giving them an opportunity to kind of calm their body back down. We're giving them an opportunity to clue back in. We're doing big motions to engage their whole body. Then we'll switch sides. Eventually, the kids will start looking forward to leading this game for you. And the kids that are willing to start leading this game are probably also the children that would be willing to help you lead worship, possibly also the kids that will be willing to help us come up with motions in the future that are fun for the kids. So the first few times that you did that mirroring activity, I would do it silently so that they can focus. But you may be able to review some rules once this becomes second nature. It's kind of your warm-up. That was my phone, not yours. So sorry. I think that's just about all that I have for you. Again, this is something that I love doing. So if I can help you problem solve, I would love to do that for you. And I can't wait to see you guys lead our kids and lead well. You are not serving at low cost, and I know that. And as a mom of a kid who will be learning from you, I can't tell you how appreciative I am and how confident I am in your ability to be a lead worshiper for our kids. So thanks for doing this.